It's my deepest honor and pleasure to introduce our first speaker. She's studied in the halls of MIT, got her PhD from Carnegie Mellon, all the while making Rube Goldberg machines and occasionally, being on the cover of a magazine, things like that along the way. And this was all before she started her own robotics lab at Oregon State, which she's going to tell you about. But it is my deepest and most wonderful privilege to introduce you to the incomparable Dr. Heather Knight.
Good evening. Hello. It is so amazing to be here. One of my first talks ever, like 10 years ago, was at Mindshare LA. Yeah, first, woo, Dougie. Yeah, my first job out of college was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and I briefly left the social robot, which is like the robot that operates around people, to hang out with space robots. And I hear we have some great space people in the audience as well, which is awesome. But yeah, so it's been a long ride. I run the Charisma Lab at Oregon State University, Charisma Robotics. And I'm really interested in how we can make robot characters. And some of those characters are robots that have forms that are very unlike ours. They might not even have arms or faces, but just by how they behave, they can convey a sense of character and state. And so I'm going to tell you a lot about what I call minimal social robots. And also, it is Los Angeles. I hear some people do entertainment here.
No.
Yeah, so a lot of my work also takes inspiration from acting and performance and what we can learn from you guys or those guys to make more charismatic technology. So let's rewind a little bit. So we heard a couple different perspectives on robotics. I think that when you are raised as an engineer, you come up to think of robots as being able to sense, think, and act. And often you think about robots doing applications that are the 3Ds, the dull, the dangerous, or the dirty. So they do things that we don't want to do, that are really boring, that are dangerous. It's pretty hard to reach Mars with people right now, at least if we want to come back. And that's been a really amazing way to increase production and precision and be able to get data about stuff. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, we used to talk about a lot of spacecraft is the extension of our own senses. So it's like almost like a prosthetic arm into the extended universe, which is pretty cool. But these days, we're seeing a lot more robots and technology operating in human environments. So we've got like silly Snapchat filters on our phone, some of us, and emojis. And I think what you often find if you look at the history of technology is that the more pervasive it becomes, the more charismatic and playful and interesting, and the higher expectations are of robots that don't barge through the door first, but actually know some of these like social norms to be able to operate around us. So we start also seeing things like social bonding. I love this poster. It's from Washington, D.C. maybe 10 years ago. Missing drone, like you lost your cat, where did it go? Like offering reward, right? And so we bond really easily with these machines. We're seeing also a collaborative manufacturing, people working side by side with these robots, and they're like, I swear, it only breaks when I go to the bathroom. Like their families ask about them at the dinner table at night when they go home. And this is not saying that everyone that encounters a robot is going to have that kind of experience, but if you spend a lot of time with them, we are people, right? When we can be around each other, we can be around dogs. We're very adaptable, and so if machines can convey sort of this sense of character, it kind of happens automatically. It doesn't even need to actively try. We will start to attribute characteristics. A last story I'll tell about modern robots before mine is the tug robot. And so this is a robot that delivers supplies and linens in hospitals. So this one was operating in Pittsburgh for a while. And so they had it running the same behavior system on the maternity ward where lots of people were really happy, new babies, grandparents, mostly good news, right? And then they had it running on the surgery floor. People are stressed out, not as many family members in the area. Same behavior system, same programming. On the maternity ward, people loved it. They thought it was wonderful. Like, this is like the future, this is so cool. The surgery floor, they were kicking it, they were calling it names, they thought it was awful, they wanted to defer to them. And so it's not enough to just have the robots pay attention to what human norms, but they also need to be able to adapt for different social contexts. And so those are some of the challenges that engineers need to solve if we are to actually make these robots function in our everyday lives. So to sum it all up, I guess the one thing that engineers need to learn is that sometimes when you are trying to get robots to do things around people, you need to go beyond the shortest path or the path that will take the least energy, but actually think about how that path will also convey things to people. So basically what I'm saying here is that robots need a little bit more flair. Okay? Right. So my PhD thesis was about expressive motion for robots, and it turns out motion alone can convey things like, is the robot in a rush? And that changes whether people will be willing to interrupt it. Does the robot want to give me this basket of candy, in which case I must take it? And sometimes even people around you will be like, girl, it's trying to give you a candy bar, just take it. Don't be rude. But then the robot's looking this way, handing you the candy bar. This is actually cotton candy. This is an experiment in Australia. Handing cotton candy thing to someone at a carnival, and then people are like, oh, I don't know if that was really yours. I'm going to take it. So when people do this complex social calculation, even about something as simple as the way the robot's facing versus where its arm handing off. So it's so automatic. All right. So I'm going to talk about two main things. One, some projects, just a handful of projects from my current lab, a lot about really simple robots. I won't have time to talk about all of them, but you can catch me later. And then I will also talk to you about robots in film. So I started a robot film festival in 2009. So it's been 9 years, and you'll see a lot of robot films sprinkled through today's event, which I'm really excited to share with you. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the film festival and how storytelling can influence not only research, but also entertainment, and vice versa. Charisma. Collaborative, humans and robots. Interaction, sociability, machine learning, and art. Kazaa! Yeah, I had the word charisma for 4 years before I made up the acronym, but there's this nerd street cred thing where you have to do some funny things, make up really long acronyms to make it in the nerd world. So yeah, it happened. But yeah, so the concept of the lab is that we take inspiration from entertainment to make more charismatic technology, so more effective social robots that operate around people. And so one of our favorite projects the last couple of years has been robot chairs. And then these are also some of my grad students down there. We also have an artist in residence program. We've had people that are theater artists, dancers, video game designers come hang out with us in wine country in Oregon. And help come up with ideas to make cool things in robotics or make cool performance pieces. So we've had a lot of fun. And it's really interesting because my interest in the intersection between art and engineering has gone back a really long way. So I started out as an undergrad at the MIT, and I worked at the MIT Media Lab, and this is my second robotics project ever. And I'm going to show you a video. This is a robot flower garden installed in a museum in New York City. It was there for 6 months, which is crazy to me. It broke all the time, and I always got to be the one that fixed it because it was a 4-person team. I was the youngest sophomore. So I replaced the cables. I got to see a lot of people interacting with it. I'll let you watch the video, and we'll chat some more. Whoops. Sorry, guys. So I guess some simple robot sensors. It doesn't take very much to make the robots react to you. So my entry point into robotics was this field called social robotics, where robots would interact with people. And if I look a lot over some of my early projects, which I pictured in the top, Cyberflora, the Cloud, which is this interactive obelisk that was in this Fortezza di Basso in Florence. It was a low resolution display that would react as you got close to it or you touched it. You could make it like water, ripple over the surface of of the display. This Sensate bear, which was meant to be a Sensate skin for a robotic teddy bear. There's a lot of pieces that in my early work that I think are very reminiscent to basically interactive art. And so actually when I became part of the Mindshare community a decade ago, I started building some interactive art installations at old versions of this event. And it was a really great entry point to the intersection of art and technology for me, where I sort of officially acknowledged that I really cared about that relationship. So as part of Syn Labs, which was an offshoot from Mindshare a while back, we started doing some other projects, a Rube Goldberg machine for OkGo that was really phenomenal and really convinced me that performers know a ton about how technology reads to people, which was what I was trying to do in social robotics anyway. So I went back to do my PhD at Carnegie Mellon. Basically, my expressive motion system is adapted from a system from dance annotation, the Laban effort system. I've been playing with improv and a bunch of other stuff. So it's been a really fun journey. And I guess these days, one of the things that I've thought about a lot is how the stories that people tell when they see those robots really helps them be more charismatic, but also more useful. So if I can understand what you're trying to get done, I can also help, or I can move out of the way. And if you would understand what I want, if the robots can tell stories about us, then they can actually better meet our needs. Or, like if you're, really want to exercise, maybe like help psychoanalyze like what we're doing. We have a project called Resolution Bot to encourage you to meet your own goals. But in order to do that, they really need to understand people. So one of my first projects after deciding that I was going to intersect entertainment and robotics more explicitly was a robot stand-up comedian. And so the initial joke system was like really simple. It was basically a database of jokes. They're like labeled along some different attribute scales, like how intellectual they were, how appropriate, the length, likeliness to be heard before. And it would basically tell the joke, and after the punchline, it would look out in the audience and like query, and I would give these read back feedback cards and see what the distribution of color is, and also listen to the response. And the idea there was, could we have an adaptive performance with a live audience? So this was in 2011. I learned a lot about comedy since then, so a lot about robot storytelling and so on. And so it's actually really fun as a professor now. I'm restarting some of that project, but you can see some of the initial work in my TED Talk as well. So one of our more recent things, we had this artist in residence, Jeremy Uran, who choreographed some pieces with robot chairs. So I'm going to show that.
Cherry just wants to dance with somebody. Was a narrative love story performed at the Robot Film Festival in Portland, Oregon, in front of a live audience. We asked ourselves, what happens if a human and a robot in the dance floor? Act 1 explored that introduction. Act 2 of this piece found the Chairbot sharing a touch sensor dance. This allowed for in the moment interactive development of character and relationship. Conflict arrives in the form of a second dancer Chairbot in Act 3. In this section, we explore how relationship dynamics are interrupted, reformed, and transformed through movement. The objective for this piece was to use non-verbal gesture and movement as a means of communication and storytelling technique rather than dialogue. The Chairbots and two human dancers share synchronous but separate duets. As the two skip away, the final moment of this piece found our Chairbot performers on stage together, culminating in a final LED lit kiss. Charisma Robotics would like to think that.
Cool. Yeah, cute chairs. So, I mean, echoing some of what Doug said about people feeling bad for the dogs at the beginning, it is very natural and actually just, it's automatic that people empathize with machines. So even this idea of seeing that kiss from two chairs, I bet before you walked into this audience today, you didn't think you'd see two chairs making out on stage. Huh? But yeah, so we do a lot of interesting work with minimal social robots, and I'll show you one more video in a little bit. But let's move into robot storytelling at the Robot Film Festival. So one of the reasons I founded this event, along with Marek Miskolowski and Chris Wu in 2009, is to kind of promote more positive storytelling about robots. And I think that entertainment and storytelling in general is a great way to sort of inspire the future or critique the present. And I think robots also have this really interesting role as foils to ourselves. So the film festival has been around for 9 years. You can, go online tomorrow, have a lazy robot Saturday, watch some old films. And I was really interested in intersecting communities from both robotics and from entertainment, and get them to talk to each other. I think that there's a lot of power of narrative, both to present the work that we have currently been doing and share it with the world, but also to think about what we want to do in the future. And then in the past, we've had a lot of 3D printed robot statuettes. So you can get, robot awards at the Boxcars. Yeah. So in terms of a more research style thing that might be included in something like this, one of our more recent projects with Robot Improviser could be a kind of video that would be coming in from the more research side. And then I'll show you something that's more storytelling. So some students in my group invented a new improv game. It's called Relativity, because all the action occurs relative to an X on the floor. And so basically, the performers, where really the human gets a suggestion to start the scene, and then the robot, which is only capable of movement, not speech, and the improviser, which can do movement and speech, take turns developing the scene until someone says, scene, right? So we're stealing a lot of concepts from improv, and we ran a research experiment. And so we were looking at this idea of robots as creativity aids. So robots can't always do everything that we can do, but if you put a person and a robot together, sometimes it can get you out of your doldrums, and you can keep moving something forward. So we actually just published a paper about this, so you're welcome to look at that up later. We just submitted it, so we'll add it to our website super soon. But I'll show you an example of one of the scenes.
And your suggestion is vacation.
Oh man, are these just plane tickets on the ground? Yeah, check this out. This is 2 tickets to Hawaii. It just feels wrong to take it though. Do you see anybody around? I mean, I can travel on those dates. It'd be a shame if no one took them. Yeah, you're right. We shouldn't take them. I'll just turn a blind eye and walk away. Okay? I'm walking away now. Walking away.
All right, so you get the general idea. And so it was really fun. We had some controlled conditions where the movement could be completely controlled by a wizard, a person remote controlling the robot, and another one where the robot motion sequence was predefined. And no matter what, people came up with a story, which is like, it brings up this really interesting question, like, what can we do to inform a robot character? Do we even have control? Will people always do it automatically? And it's been really fun for me as a researcher to start to understand some of the nonverbal cues that people use, how we orient, how we move over time, how we react to other things, how even robots can coordinate in groups. So we have multiple robot furniture. If you're at a birthday party, you can have the chairs rearranged to be different, to do different parts of that birthday party, or also play musical chairs. So there's all these fun things that you can do with robot characters. So one of the experiments we're running this summer is called Chairbot and the Seven Dwarfs. So stay tuned. We're going to see if we can actually convey 7 distinct characters with a chair. But yeah. This idea of taking something that looks nothing like a person and conveying character, you've all seen it in Disney movies, and the furniture from Beauty and the Beast. And there's psychologists that have been trying to study this for a long time. So I just want you to watch this video and imagine they're Roombas. gonna happen. Are you telling a story right now? Or is this just a sequence of random motions? Huh? What you're doing right now is called anthropomorphizing. Yay! So it's really interesting. It turns out there's parts of our brain that are dedicated to processing, well, faces, you know that, but also goal-directed motion. So this idea of like biological-like motion. Is something going to eat me? What's it trying to do? And so we are really fast about trying to understand what something's goal is. And so as soon as a robot sees an obstacle and moves around it, it's alive. Like it has causal motion. Like it is making a decision about what it wants. And so that is all you need to start treating a robot like a character. This is almost the very last thing, but I'm going to show you another video from the Robot Film Festival that similarly explores this idea of a very minimal social robot. So this is coming from a design school in Portugal, and again, I think this one is fully scripted, but it is a real physical robot. But I just want to see how much of yourself you can see in this robot, even though it looks like a really fancy lemon squeeze thing. He's a robot that wants to play small games with you. You have to mimic him precisely because he's very demanding. If you upset him, he'll change his mind for a while. I think all robots should have hobbies. Huh? He's a mind of his own, but he still wants your company. Yeah, super adorable. So in conclusion, I just want to remind you to think about ways that art and technology can continue to mutually inspire. And this can happen in research. We used improv principles to learn about pedestrian behaviors and how other vehicles would react to robots. And so what we should program into robots, they call this the robot duck crossing the road. So we can use things like improv to make better robots. And then we can also use entertainment to tell, positive stories about robot futures. You're not limited, robot. Just dream bigger. It can learn from us too. A vision for the future. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious, the source of all true art and science. The unknown, the mysterious is where art and science meet. Please shout out to my students. Thank you very much.